going to increase, annual increase, and how often that and then my last comment regarding this has to do with the proposal of, the short-term or medium and long-term. And one of the proposals is to look to see if we, the city, would do a full and this is about $10 million. So my question to Catherine and others is, so we move forward with this, which makes sense, but in this, really, what if those monies don't come in? How do we handle that if we move forward with the projects, or if we've borrowed the money but haven't moved forward with the projects? What is the cost of just going through that process of borrowing some of that $10 million to start some of these projects in anticipation of receiving that revenue? That would be really helpful to understand that. So thank you so much.
Sharon, is anyone else online who'd like to address Board of Finance for public forum? You can raise your Zoom hand if so. Seeing none. Yes. Yes, affirmative. No. Right. Yes.
There is no one else.
Affirmative. Okay. Affirmative. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So with no one else here to address Board of Finance, I will close public forum and we move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion on our consent agenda?
Adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Moved by Councilor Travers. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Barlow. Any discussion before we vote? See none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving now on to our deliberative agenda. Item 4.1 is about our city's recycling program and our next steps. We have Department of Public Works here tonight. Come on up when you're ready. We'll note that we have till 6 o'clock upstairs. We have a very full city council meeting agenda, so we will try to keep this, knowing that we will also discuss this upstairs. I will try to keep an eye on time. So we're going to share the space. Take it away.
Thank you. Chapman Spencer, Director of Public Works. I have with me Division Director Lee Perry, who oversees our maintenance division and our recycling program. Appreciate the time. There's been a lot of work that's happened since we came to the City Council on the 14th of April. We really appreciate the Council's guidance at that point. There have been numerous follow-up meetings with staff, with the TOOC in late April, with the administration and even our partners, our private haulers and CSWD, as we have worked to plot the path forward. Thanks to the work with the TOOC, we came up with a resolution or a motion, excuse me, that was in your packet that the TOOC approved 3-1. It laid out a short and a medium and a long-term approach to recycling that was summarized by the caller, former Councilor Busher. On the short term, really focusing on recruitment and retention of our existing staff, both in recycling as well as in street maintenance, which has been backfilling the 3 out of 4 vacancies in the recycling program. Medium term, working with the council and the administration on selecting a either in-house approach for the next 3 to 5 years, fully funded to not put a burden on street maintenance, or to contract the service out for the next 3 to 5 years. which would give us time in the long term to determine and evaluate really whether the city wanted to fully implement a consolidated collection system for all three waste streams: trash, recycling, and compost. At the council meeting, we did hear a number of concerns about either staff, management not doing enough around employee support, or that we'd had aged equipment. And I want to say that we'll answer that in the presentation to council tonight, because we have taken steps over the years to really support staff and reclassify the positions and support the team. And we had 2 recycling trucks on order that through COVID were on a very slow build time, and we did withdraw those orders that you all had approved in the past, because we wanted this conversation to finish before we accepted about $500,000 of new assets that we potentially would then have to resell. So we've worked really hard to come to this short, medium, and long-term approach, and Lee will quickly summarize the key elements of the short-term recruitment and retention approach.
Yeah, so we approached our streets and recycling staff back in April 22nd with the idea of offering premiums, hiring bonuses, and referral bonuses. And the $4 an hour premium would be for any CDL holding street maintenance employee or recycling employee that would volunteer and do recycling. And then we would, if we couldn't get enough staff to run the program properly, we would then look outside of our department for the option of staff who hold CDL and say water distribution or sewer, or any of those other departments, to be able to help out recycling after hours, so after 3 p.m. And they would be paid on an overtime basis. And then if we couldn't fulfill the need through that option, then we would revert back to mandating on a rotational basis the streets employees to do recycling. But the employees that would be doing the recycling would get that $4 an hour premium retroactive paid April 22nd through the end of the fiscal year. And then we budgeted in FY26 for the premiums and the retention bonuses and referral bonuses through the end of December.
The current situation is we have 3 vacancies in street maintenance. We expect to be up to 5 vacancies here in 2 months, and we have 3 vacancies in recycling. I would hate to consider that if we can't move the needle on this, we may need to downgrade the level of service of our recycling program and consider some every other week type collection, as we are really trying to keep the lights on despite having many staff vacancies. Happy to answer any questions.
David, and before we open it for questions, I just want to really express appreciation both to council and to the public, et cetera, for us to just really engage in quite a robust conversation about this, and really appreciate the staff really doing some real due diligence to go in deeper into this topic, engaging the union, AFSCME in these conversations to come up with an alternative path that we really bring with all good faith, and working with the 2 committee as well to really know that there's a lot of deep work that went in behind this. And now we're bringing it back for just further discussion by council. So I just want to appreciate that. We open it up. So questions or comments by the board? Councilor Carpenter?
Just curious, not that you can answer me, but you mentioned every other week. Will we in our diligence have a way to try to figure out, like, could we go every other week? Could, how do we, somebody mentioned Brattleboro where you buy the bag, some options. I just think we should throw that in the hopper, as we look at that, because we have high expectations and maybe we can't live up to them. Y'all do have to get a bigger, or some of us don't need a bigger bill, so.
In some self-haul, it's definitely something we can look into. It's proposed in the consultant study back in 2021 with consolidated collection. There would be weekly trash, every other week recycling pickup, would reduce costs. I don't know what the demand would be. I mean, I've seen it going on a recycling truck. Everybody likes to put their bins out every week, regardless if it's full or not, so I think, I don't know if we would send out a questionnaire
I
to
don't know how you do it, but I think
residents
it's,
or.
no, people are probably gonna be happy anyway, because it's probably gonna be more expensive. So I just think answering those questions would be helpful.
And we can take a look at the pay-as-you-throw model, which you talked about in Brattleboro. That would be part of the fully consolidated approach, is that's for trash pickup, and currently we don't do trash. For recycling frequency, we can evaluate that. One of the pieces we've heard is that in the denser part of town, they can't fit as many of the larger bins, and so they appreciate the more frequent service, because, you know, in the student neighborhoods or in the Old North End where space is very tight, there is significant recycling every week. And we have noticed that it would be hard to accommodate without getting additional bins or larger bins to fit. But it's a conversation we can have. I realized we didn't touch on the former Councilor Busher's comment about the increase in the solid waste generation tax. That is a monthly tax that haulers pass on to customers. So that would be approximately a $5.10 per month increase for the city to more sustainably run our recycling program.
We usually adjust that annually if needed with the budget. I don't think we've had to come mid fiscal year to adjust that at all. We usually have set. So where the time and solid there.
Councilor Barley?
First of all, thank you. I'm glad that we came to an approach that I think's a really good one. Allow us to collect the data from private haulers to see the cost, their approach versus a fully costed approach at DPW. I think we need all that information to make a responsible decision about the future of the program and to help us in any future discussions we may or may not have about consolidated collection. So thank you for that, and I'm fully supportive of this tonight. And I'll have maybe some additional comments upstairs, but I did have a question I wanted to sort of queue up for you, and I had talked with Lee about this a little bit, and it's regarding the equipment that we had and the orders that we withdrew. I understand that part of our dilemma with recycling isn't just staffing, it's equipment maintenance as well. And the ability to get new equipment is sort of essential for the long-term sustainability of the program. So I guess the question is, first, are you able to unwithdraw the order? And then the second question is, if you aren't, what's the timeline on new recycling equipment if we were to place an order?
Yeah, you know, I spoke briefly with the fleet manager, Dave Hammond, about this last week, because if we didn't withdraw our order at the time and the trucks started the process of being built, and then we tried to back out, we would have had a large fee to pay after we withdraw. It's 22 to 25,000. To start the process again, you know, we would have to send out RFQs to the vendors to get new pricing on the trucks and see if there would be an increase.
So we'd have to start all over again.
Yeah,
And
we wouldn't be where we were in our order of, you know, having our order submitted, we would have to start.
So in the 3 to 5 year time frame, we're talking about using the existing equipment with the challenges that we have to try to.
With the fully loaded budget that we put together, we included money for either renting newer equipment, purchasing a used piece of equipment, or if there was clarity that, you know, we're in it for another 5 years, then, you know, we can have that conversation about, we don't want the two pieces that are far beyond end of life, we are not gonna rely on for the next 5 years.
That's really
But there's money in the budget to not be flat-footed for the next 3 to 5 years.
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions or comments from the, or knowing that we're gonna talk about it upstairs?
Just very
So you
quickly,
do- yeah.
sorry to just come firstly, I just want to thank you, I think the former councilor for sure remarks during public comment reflect where I am I appreciate the work and collaboration, so. Thank you.
One more?
I'll move to approve and recommend that the city
Actually, I was
council.
gonna skip over that part, but thank
Oh, you
you,
okay.
sorry, that copy did not help. Okay, go ahead, Council Burlow.
Yeah, I move to approve and recommend that the city council authorize the DPW director to execute the DPW employee retention and recruitment memorandum of agreement between AFSCME Local 1343 and the city of Burlington Department of Public Works.
Thank you very much for that motion, Council Burlow. Is there a second? And by Councilor Travers, any further discussion on this item before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Moving on to Burlington Electric Department, item 4.2 is related to our next fiscal year 2026 with our proposed rate increase for.
Good evening.
Let's get going.
We have one slide we were gonna share. Good evening. We had shared previously the presentation on rates at the May 7th budget presentation with the Board of Finance, but we have one slide we wanted to update because we now have a better projection of our known and measurables, which is what would feed into sort of what the justification would be at the PUC for a rate change versus what we're actually requesting, which is a good metric to see. So we're gonna just jump to that slide. And you can see here on the end 2025 that we would be justified with a projected 6.4% increase. We're only asking, of course, for the 4.5 because we're trying as best we can to keep rate pressure low for customers. We also, the next item on the agenda will be an expansion of our energy assistance program to reach more customers, including residential shelters that support unhoused residents in Burlington. So we're working hard to expand our affordability programs in a few ways that we'll touch on next. So we're glad to walk through any of the other slides if there is interest or to answer any questions. But this was the only one that had changed from the May 7th presentation that we gave.
Questions or comments from the board? Council Carpenter.
Can you quickly remind me, where our rates stand relative to GMPs or our neighbors?
We do have that slide.
Okay, I can wait till.
We can just jump right to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is residential, and we are below not only the New England average, but the Vermont average by a significant margin. And that lower bar, the lowest bar there is with the energy assistance program customers. So they have an even greater savings relative to the Vermont average. Vermont is the lowest residential rate in New England, and we're below that significantly. So on residential, we're doing quite well. A little more on commercial and industrial, we're a little more close to the Vermont average, just slightly above it. We are below the New England average.
The other question I've got is where does BED stand on reliability?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly strong reliability metrics. And Munir's here and could probably speak to this in greater detail, but we get judged on two particular metrics each year at the Public Utility Commission. The abbreviations are there's acronyms SAFE and CAIDI, which is basically how many outages do you have and what is the duration of the outages. And on average, over a period of years now, our customers are seeing about one outage per year, average duration of an hour or less, which is outstanding. Obviously, it's a little unfair in a sense because we have a compact geographic service territory that's more urban in nature with almost half the infrastructure underground, and other utilities in Vermont serve a more rural territory with a number of wires and poles that are subject to a variety of weather conditions. But I would say we're doing quite well on reliability, and that continues to be the number one thing we hear from customers that they care the most about is reliability.
Thank you, Council Carpenter. Other questions or comments? So Travis.
I guess my only question here is can you explain what the timeline here would be? I mean, I know the Board of Finance would act tonight, but can you just for people tuning in, when would the council take action on this, and when would any rate increase go into effect for ratepayers? Absolutely. So if there's action tonight, it would go to council June 2nd. we would try to file something with the PUC in the middle of June. There is a period of time which nothing would happen. What we would have a change on is bills rendered in September. So there would be a surcharge that you would see of 4.5% on bills rendered in September. And we would have a rate case, obviously, at the PUC where they would review all of the different pieces here and make sure that they agree with the 4.5%. That typically takes, it can take 6 to 9 months at this point, in fact. So you might not see the actual rate change go from surcharge to base rate until, you know, maybe this time next year or a little bit before. Okay, thank you.
For the June 2nd piece, we're trying to create more of a space between board of finance action and city council and not make it concurrent, unless it absolutely has to be. So we're trying to get back into that. Something we need or schedule. Other questions or comments from the board? Is there a motion? Councilor Barlow, I think people at home can't tell, is looking to see if any other council would like to take. Councilor Travers.
Okay, I move to approve and recommend that the city council authorize the general manager of BED or the designee to file tariff amendments and supporting documents with the Vermont PUC requesting an increase in BED rates of 4.5% on bills rendered on or after September 1st, 2025 as proposed.
Thank you, Councilor Travers. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Barlow. Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Being none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Say record bar, because item 4.3 is also related to the Burlington Electric Department on its tariff sheets effective September 1, 2025, are related to the rates, which is the Energy Assistance Program.
So we have EAP, yep, EAP. We could try E.
No, I don't think so. There's no EAP, sorry about that.
So as the Board of Finance knows, we've had the Energy Assistance Program in place for a number of years now coming out of the pandemic. We expanded it originally from 7.5% to a 12.5% discount. This past year, we were able to triple enrollment in the program by moving to an auto enroll feature in the tariff. And in our quest to continue to expand the program, we have before you a set of amendments to the tariff that were just approved and recommended by our commission last week, and would mainly accomplish two things. One is would make sure that residential shelters serving the unhoused community in Burlington are eligible for this program. A number of them are not on our residential rate currently, so they're not eligible under the current structure, but this would enable us to get those shelters onto the rate and give the 12.5% bill discount to organizations that are serving that community. So that's objective number one. And then secondly, we have situations with affordable housing in some cases where the organization that is providing affordable housing may be paying for the electric bill. And so residents in the affordable housing unit may not be or may not have previously been eligible to receive the assistance. And what we have here is the ability to say that if there is a building that's affordable housing and the provider agrees to pass on the bill discount to benefit the residents, then this program would be available to them. It's important to us that the benefit be directly passed on in some way through, for example, reduced rent payment or otherwise to the residents in the building. So those are the two primary changes.
And we're removing the prohibition on the meter.
Right, a third change, good change, because I think this will actually help in one case with the Elmwood Avenue shelter that has solar. And so previously we had said if you were net metered customer, you weren't eligible for this program because we thought that the billing administration would be overly complex and impossible to manage. Our team through the finance billing department has done some great work, and we're now able to say that even if you are a net metered customer, you're eligible for this program. So we know, for example, that one of the, I think it's one or two of the accounts at Elmwood, for example, one has solar and is net metered and would not have been eligible absent this change. So that's also an important aspect here. Glad to answer your questions.
The definition of affordable housing isn't clear, and I can foresee a conversation with property owners who offer Section 8 tenant-based assistance, which is affordable.
Mhm.
But it's not the whole building, it's the apartment, so
Yes,
how you can handle it.
that exact issue came up at our commission meeting.
Yeah.
So if it is a building like that where you have a mix of affordable
Yeah.
housing and market rate, this set of changes doesn't necessarily provide a fix for that scenario. We are going to explore that a little further based on the conversation we had with our commission. And we might bring forward another change in the not distant future. So we don't have that before you tonight. It would only really apply in a building that was 100% affordable housing. But in a building that had a mix between market rate and affordable, we're gonna look at what solutions we could provide in that circumstance.
And just a caution about that, a lot of the buildings, like some of the buildings, CHT, people square are mixed.
Mhm.
They're permanently affordable in that they have covenants, so that's easy to document, but
Right.
they are mixed.
Yeah, it's a little more complex for us from a administration standpoint, so we want to dive into it a little more.
Well, and just offline, the assessor keeps track of all those buildings, so it actually already is a list of them.
Okay, that's
And
good.
that's
thought.
the estate law, so it's not that hard to get.
Okay, we can connect with them. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Before I ask for a motion, I will just also just note that from going back into November, but also just for the collaborative effort, we're trying to really cultivate utilities, the water and electric, to really merge efforts around the affordability programs to make sure that we're doing what we can for what BED has learned to apply to water and vice versa. And I just wanna emphasize that there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes where these two entities have been working really hard to make sure that we're collaborating and making sure that the similar population that in theory would be qualifying for both programs, know about both programs, and that we're trying to innovate, which I appreciate, especially the extension to some of our partners who support on-house folks in the city. This is the kind of work that we promised we would do, not only in the most recent bonds, but certainly by extension what BED has already been doing prior to its bond in November. So this is an extension of that. Yep. With that, is there a motion? Across the table there. Council Barlow.
I will move to approve and recommend that the city council authorize the general manager of Burlington Electric Department further designate to file tariff amendments and supporting documents with the Vermont Public Utility Commission to amend the energy assistance program as proposed.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Council Carpenter. Any further discussion before we vote? None. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Very much, Katie.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Moving on to our last deliberative agenda item, item 4.4, the approval of the issuance of a grant anticipated note, the cost of certain capital improvement projects. This is the GANT. It's called GANT, not GANT.
Yeah,
Just
just
we just
again,
gotta keep it fresh and
yes.
exciting with all the acronyms in city government.
Evening. Thanks for hearing about a GAN, which is different than a RAN and a TAN and a VAN.
All right, GAN.
But they're all similar in that we know we're gonna get money, but sometimes we need money now. And these are mechanisms by which we can do that. We conceived of requesting to issue a GAN after we saw the airport use this mechanism very well in times of difficult cash flow while also having large capital projects in the works. And so we've modeled our request off of what they have successfully done for the last few years. And we looked to, in particular, I just kind of want to give you some overview. The months between November and March are particularly challenging or have been particularly challenging for cash flow because it is the longest stretch between the general fund's largest source of revenue, which is property tax bills. And it is also the time at the end of construction season when some of our larger expenses are going out of the door. We've been able to manage that adroitly over at least my time here, and as far as I know, all the times before, but we think that if we had an additional $10 million on which to draw from, we would have that cushion, that flexibility that would allow us to make more thoughtful and opportunistic investments with our cash on hand, as well as ensure that our general fund cash flow can stay in good stead. We have asked for a $10 million GAN, and former councilor Sharon Busher asked a very appropriate question in what happens if the grant that you are anticipating reimbursement from no longer has available funding? And the answer to that lies in how we developed the $10 million number to ask for. So we're not issuing GANs based on speculative funding. These are already tied to awarded grants, some federal, some state. And the city will only use GAN proceeds for expenditures that are tied to committed grant funds. We have also diversified our grant sources. And so we went through and said, what are all of the large capital projects that the general fund is basically co-signing on to enact? And we started down a list. We stopped after a certain point because there was no point in continuing the list, but in a list of 13 grants, we have a total of $33,234,258 of anticipated future dollars based on our committed expenditures. The largest share of that is associated with the Champlain Parkway, followed by the RAISE and the CDS grants. So we know we have 33 million out there. We wanted to be conservative in this environment as well. So we figured we only really need about an extra 10 million in any given year that we can conceive of. So let's only ask for that. And then we have a significant buffer in the event that some unexpected. So I think we are covered from former councilor Busher's concerns, because we are asking for a conservative number. We've diversified it over time, and a lot of the cuts that you're seeing from the federal government, I can't speak to all of them because I haven't reviewed every single one, but they appear to me to be new monies, unawarded monies, future awarded or future potentially awarded monies, not committed signed grants that we've already been getting. So we are seeking your approval, and should we receive that approval, we will solicit for an RFP to have a grant anticipation note available to us that we can draw against in the event that we need to. Being that we haven't offered the RFP yet, I can't speculate exactly on the interest rates, but the past history shows that the interest rates on GANs will be about the interest rate on everything, so 5%. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover, and I'm available for questions.
Question on the GAN, team, Councilor Carpenter.
This, an observation, having been through this a couple of times. My bigger concern, because like you've probably done a fine job on the grant, is on the federal side, the chaos of the people getting the money out the door.
Yes.
So they'll have to get it to you. It's just gonna be slow.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that we Another risk that we're mitigating through requesting this again, or hoping to mitigate, is some reimbursement times are longer than others. Sometimes we're the party causing that. Oftentimes, though, we are not, and that's out of our control. And this will alleviate my and my staff's sleepless nights worrying about whether or not we got enough money to pay the bills.
Just-
Thank you.
For my own interest, who's likely to do the answer, local state banks? I don't know if it's a state bank these days, but
It
big
could-
money houses or small ones?
I think it'll be a combination of requests. I mean, often we hear from, I imagine we'll hear from KeyBank, who does most of our city's banking. We'll probably hear from M&T. And we'll likely hear from the other kind of regional banks, I would say.
Okay.
That's what I expect.
Thank you. Is the borrowing cost associated with, is that just normal debt service?
It's only when you draw, so to have it available, it doesn't cost anything. Maybe just the issuance fees and some closing costs. But then how it will work if we put it in, use this tool in our toolbox at the time when we need it, is we would basically do a draw against that $10 million. And from that point forward, we would incur interest up through the point of a reimbursement of those funds, which is that at that point we pay back again. So it would be a short-term interest related costs and possibly some small fees associated with it depending on the contract terms. But that's in large part the cost of having this flexibility in this convenience.
But is it considered like part of our long-term capital?
No.
Cost? It's not, so. It's-
No, because there's already a proven revenue source or a dedicated revenue source to cover it. And this is only in the event of delays or short-term allocations to cover needs now before we get the actual cash in the bank.
So where does it appear in the city's ledger?
Where would this appear?
I mean,
That is a
I think I
really
should-
interesting question. I think it would be in, so if we ended a fiscal year and we had not paid it off, it would show up in the general fund's balance sheet under I'm forgetting my terminology, but in the same place that our parking facilities ban falls under.
Okay.
And there's a section right in the balance sheet, I could show it to you, but I forget the terminology.
That's clear enough.
Yeah.
Gives me the general.
So, yeah, and then if, let's say we went through a fiscal year, borrowed some, paid it off, it would appear at zero.
I apologize for not providing you those questions in advance. They're sort of technical. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, that's all right,
Okay.
yeah, I was just, it's in there, and so I went searching for it, and I couldn't find it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's in there.
Other questions from the board? Motion, suggested motion. Is anyone ready to make a motion for this item?
Okay, I move to
Counselor MVP. Counselor MVP, something was in that coffee, I'm feeling funny tonight, but Counselor Barlow, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, making a lot of them. To approve and recommend that the council waive the reading and approve the attached resolution.
Thank you, Counselor Barlow, is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Newbeezer, hand went up first, any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And with that, team, we have ended our agenda, and so with no other items, I will adjourn the meeting at 5:44 p.m. Thank you very much.